G'day and welcome to City Design Thinking Meetup number 48, the Innovators Playbook with Nathan Baird. What's going on tonight?
Well, in a few minutes we're going to be live streaming, boosting creativity in your teams and workshops.
So check back in the next 15 minutes or so and we're kicking off doing some fun stuff. Chat soon.
Design thinking before it was even called design thinking, and actually he talks a lot about it in his book, and I've had the privilege of actually reading through his book. It was quite a journey down memory lane for me, having gone through some of the training. He was part of the cohort that trained a number of design thinkers in the CBA world, where I ended up becoming a coach of design thinking within that framework. And I'm really grateful for the tutelage that Nathan gave me. I'm hoping he can share some of that inspiration with the rest of you today. Off the back of that training, that was what sort of got me involved with Ben and Kingsley and James and Zoe, so a shout out to those guys around. They were the original few of us that got together to build this community out, and it was through the passion that Nathan showed that inspired me to try and get involved and obviously find out more about the community of design that actually exists. So thank you very much, Nathan. That's a personal thank you. I wouldn't have found it if I didn't go through that journey with you. I won't go too much further than that. I'll let Nathan share most of the other insights, and we'll have a quick chat afterwards. And yeah,
Okay, well thank you everyone for coming along. It's great to see such a great crowd. A few familiar faces as well, which is a bit unfortunate because I've got to stretch the truth so much on the stories that I was going to tell. Although I can always tell a few about Lucas. We've also got some design royalty here tonight, which is fantastic as well, so good to see you all here. Look, this is actually my first talk since coming out from management consultancy, which was pretty traumatic, obviously, not coming out, but the actual working with a management consultancy. You're a tough crowd. So I had 3 years at KPMG where I got a lot of shit about my dad jokes. But you know, to be honest, it's not a bad place to work. You know, I think everyone should go there and learn how to do, spreadsheets. I actually knew I was doomed on day one when I was helping some of the younger team members out. They were doing some CX work for MBN, and they wanted me to have a look over the agenda for the ideation workshop. And they put it together in Excel. Straight away I knew what the problem was with creativity and management consultancy.
We're still doing it.
There's a few of them here tonight. But no, seriously, it's not a bad place to work, and it's like, when you're at school, when you're breaking up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you say it's me, it's not you. Hence when I've stepped out on the other side and back in more comfy clothes. So now, look, what I thought we'd touch on tonight is a little bit out of the book. It's chapter 4A, if you're interested. We had to split the chapter on ideation up into two because it was too big. And look, I think it's a hard task talking to an audience like you tonight about creativity. Yeah. But whilst you may not get too much out of it, what I hope you will get out of it is, well, how do I share creativity with my colleagues? Yeah. And how do I share it with those teams and boost it in them? Okay. So if we achieve that, then we've done well. And please jump in if you've got any questions. So I guess this question goes without saying, really. And you've probably all seen this quote before, and it's used so much, and I think it's so fantastic. Yeah? If we want to come up with something new, we're going to need creativity, aren't we? Yeah, we can't just keep coming up with new stuff, doing the same thing over and over again. But what really interests me is we need creativity to come up with ideas. We need useful and actionable ideas, so we can come up with innovation, and we need innovation for growth. But what I'm actually really passionate about is people. Yeah? So if you read any of the stuff by Mahali Csikszentmihalyi, see if you can pronounce that, who's the author of Flow. Human beings are at their most happiest, they're in flow, on the zone, when they're being creative. Now that doesn't have to be creative of the arts types, Yeah? It could be cooking. It could be gardening. Yeah? It could be whatever you're into that unleashes you. So if we're not allowing our people, whoever our people are, to be creative, then they're not going to be fulfilled, and neither the organisations are. So it's really important. And obviously, it's important for CX, for innovation, for design, things like that. But it's not just us. It's anybody who's solving problems. It could be HR who are trying to sort out onboarding. It could be sales, could be logistics. So creativity is so important for everybody, no matter what part of the organisation you exist in. So obviously having a process for whether it's for design, innovation, creativity is really important. I'm not saying this is the creative process. That's why I just say it's a process. But you're probably familiar with it. You've got to define the problem, immerse yourself in the problem, ideally immerse yourself in the customer, do some incubation, generate some ideas, harvest them, and then you've got to get into the development. But you can have the best process in the world, but you keep hitting up against these barriers. They might be within you, they might be within your team, it could be your organisation. And so that's what I really want to talk about tonight. What are these 5 killers of creativity and how can you overcome them? Yeah? So do you want to stay and listen to that, or do you want to go to crypto? Last chance. So these are the 5 barriers to creativity. So your beliefs or your attitude, your brain and how that works, your behaviours, the state you're in, and the space or the environment you're in. So let's talk about beliefs first. So who in this room, this will be an interesting little quiz. Put your hand up if you're creative. Come on. Interesting, eh? Design thinking meetup, mostly designers and creatives in the room and only half of you are creative. Yep. There's a guy, I think his last name is Mackenzie. He used to work for Hallmark Cards. He headed up the creative department. Written a fantastic book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Yeah? You can probably finish it just on the runway to Melbourne, let alone the takeoff and the landing. Yeah, but it's really good. But when he was, I believe this is the case, he doesn't quite allude to it, but when he was dying from cancer, he wanted to give back. So he went around a whole lot of schools and he had some big truck filled with metalworks and all sort of crazy stuff that you wouldn't be allowed to do in schools today. And went around the schools. But he'd do this little quiz. And so he'd be in kindy or year 1 and goes, who's creative? And everyone, I'm creative. And then by the time he got to year 12, there might be one closet creative down the back of the room who didn't want to admit it because they might get beaten up or it wasn't cool or whatever. So we go through life and we sort of lose our creativity. So getting your teams to believe they're creative is actually your biggest and hardest challenge. And you know how hard it is to change beliefs. So I think it's worth looking at a couple of myth busters first. And obviously, if you believe you're not creative, then that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we've got to turn that around, but how do we do it? And I think De Bono is someone who's done a lot in this space because he talks about, well, let's not think about whether it's in our DNA. Let's just think about creativity in terms of, well, what are the skills? Yeah? And if we learn those, we can be more creative. And I think he says, whoever learns most will be the most creative. And you see it on, Dancing with the Stars. I don't know if it's still on, or if any of you are old enough to remember it. And they're all pretty crap at the start, but some of them actually end up being good dancers because they learn. Yeah? I could go and learn how to run faster. Would I get to the Olympics? No. But I could run faster than I do currently. So how we find we can change people's beliefs is actually sort of going around it. Yeah? I mean, you've got to get people to be open, first of all, so you're having a go, but then you want them to apply the tools and that of creativity and have some experiences, have some wins or some successes, and through that, they start building their creative confidence. And that's some of the things that we did, for example, with the CBA team. So we actually build the belief and attitude by tackling the other 4 barriers. So I just thought what we'd do for a little bit of fun, and I don't know how this is going to work because I don't normally do a lot of this. I thought we'd do a little improv exercise. Yeah? So we're going to start up the front, and we're just going to pass the story on, okay? So I'm going to kick it off. Someone builds on it. So it's a bit like whose line is this anyway? And then they go in then, and that passes it on, okay? Now given there's about 80 people here, we won't keep going, but I don't know, we'll go until it gets too silly.
Do they need to maintain the accent?
Yes. Yeah. So I should check, does anyone understand a word I've said? How to explain the blank lips? You up for it? Sure. Okay. So it was Valentine's Eve. You'd just been to a design thinking talk. You started walking off down George Street, and then?
And then we came to this hustling, bustling scene where there was lots of choices to be had as to what to do next. Oh, sorry.
Volume! There's a whole room!
Use your theatre voice.
Theatre voice.
Theatre voice!
Is that your microphone?
That's it.
Yeah, so as we walked down George Street, we saw all these amazing things to do in front of us, and we were just perplexed by the choice that we had. But then we walked into, for just something to do, the souvenir shop.
And then?
And then we realized we forgot our wallet at home and turned back around, and then?
And then we turned around again and again and again, realising that everyone was staring at us and we could make some money out of it and pay for our souvenirs that way. And as we were turning around, we then
Bumped into an old friend, and the old friend told us, there's a party going on, there's another meetup you have to come to, and then...
And then I walked really excitedly to the other meetup and found that Scott Morrison was there.
Yeah, and then that was a bit of a bummer. So we started making some signs. A couple of them were real ringers, and the best sign that we made all night was...
Sorry, I'm French. I didn't get
That's a good sign.
Sorry, are we already here or not yet?
We're at the meeting.
We are at the meeting. Okay. So it
And we
was
were
a
making
bench.
signs, and the best sign was...
And we hear you.
The best sign was the starting of the presentation. And then?
That's good. Thank you. Sorry. All good. So what did we learn from that?
It saved my life because
Yo, Greg. What did we learn from that? Creativity saves lives.
Some of them lied about being creative.
So yeah. But you're going to get over that fear, don't you? And then, creativity is about letting go and coming up with anything. Has anyone ever watched like a toddler? And you're just entranced by them because they're just going along, oh, bumblebee, oh, flower, oh, what's that? Oh, this is last night's dinner, They're just totally in the moment. And the other thing is obviously building on each other's ideas. All good. Okay, so that's the first one done. So we're going to tackle beliefs really through the others. So the next one's our brain. Yeah. So our brain, as you most probably know, is a massive storage device. Yeah. Some of us have quite an organised brain. Some of you in the room is probably a bit more like this. But it's a remembering machine. So every sort of memory, every moment, every experience you have in your life, your brain stores it. But because it's linear and analytical, it stores them in files. Yeah? So this is how to get dressed in the morning. This is the types of ice cream. Yeah? This is what cats and dogs do. It stores it all. And that's a good thing, because imagine if every morning you're like, oh, where do these go? Where should I put this? You wouldn't want to be creative. And you wouldn't want to be creative trying to find a way across the road every day, would you? Could be a bit dangerous. So it's fantastic. But the downside of it is when you want to come up with new ideas. Yeah? So if I said, let's come up with an idea for an ice cream, you'd be like, straight away your brain's already doing this. In a cone, in a cup, chocolate mint, banana chocolate chip, depending on which country you come from, strawberries and cream, with lemonade, call it a spider or cream and soda. You cannot think of anything new because your brain's going to that file and pulling out everything it already knows, which already exists. Yeah? So that's where like de Bono's term lateral thinking comes from. We've got to literally pull one of the wires out and go into another file. So what happens to ice cream on a hot day? Melts. Yeah? So we go, okay, let's go to another file. What else in the world keeps things cool?
Beer coolers.
Beer coolers. Thank you, Irish man. Anyone else? Eskies. Or chili bins. What else?
Air conditioners.
Air conditioners. Yeah. So, maybe you walk around and you get a free air conditioner, or you come up with a beer cooler for an ice cream, or, there might be crap ideas, but you see, you've got to go to that different place to come up with something new. So, in creativity, we need to trick the brain. We've got to stimulate it in some way. So, where do we get stimulus from? So, like I said, you've got all these experiences in your life. So, one of my favourite presenters, Simon Sinek, he's not really. Great content. I just don't like the dramatic pauses. He was talking about this other day, like your conscious brain has got access, he was talking about yards and acres or something, a couple of yards of information, whereas your subconscious has access to, I can't remember what it was, 11 acres or something like that. But anyway, lots of information. The problem being that when we're flat out busy, we can't tap into our subconscious. So anyway, we want to get into all these prior experiences, and we can also create new experiences, and we can do creative exercises. So if you want to think about your prior experiences, how many of you know someone like this? Do the same thing every day, same commute, same news sites, blog sites, whatever. Spend most of your time with people from similar backgrounds. And look, we all do this at times. Really go out of your way to try new things, meet new people, go to new places. So busy you settle for the first good solution to a problem. Suspect that many of your ideas could be copied by competitors. Yeah? And if you're really honest with yourself, you'd say most of your ideas are quite incremental. Yeah? Welcome to corporate world. So what would innovative or creative managers or people, what would they do? Any thoughts? It's a free book for the first good thought. Experiment. You know that one. Anyone else?
Ask questions.
Ask questions.
He's also an organiser.
Are you?
No, he's not. Just want people to
What's your name?
Megan.
There you go.
She's not on the list.
Thank you. So experiment, ask questions. What else can we do?
Meet new people.
Meet new people, yeah. That'd be one good thing out of hot desking, wouldn't it? Go to an art exhibition. Fantastic. Let me get you up here soon.
Use meetup.
Use meetup. Yeah. So there's a lot of things we can do to start filling up our experiences with fresh new stimulus. These are some examples that we did, so years and years ago, when we were doing some work with Sainsbury's in the UK. And it was for their produce and bakery sections. And they wanted to own freshness. So what do they want to do? They want to be known for freshness. So we organised what we called a creative safari for everyone to go around London. Gave everyone the tube maps or A to Z or whatever before you had iPhones. And met up and then sent everyone off to go and discover how other people did freshness. So going into those other filing cabinets or whatever, yeah? So one place we went to wasn't in Greece, but anyway, that would have been nice, was a fishmonger. And we said, how do you do freshness? And he goes, I only buy from day boats. I'm like, what's a day boat? They go, well, they go out every day, they catch fish, come back, and sell it to us. Whereas some other boats, the trawlers go out for a couple of weeks and they freeze the fish and, you get it and you might be eating it several weeks later. It's frozen straight away, so it's okay, but it's not the same. I'm like, wow. What if we bake bread daily? Which, believe it or not, was a bit of a breakthrough back then. Yeah. And then started looking at food miles, and so then, Jamie Oliver was promoting, I don't know, Dorset potatoes from Dorset and things like that. So it actually gave us inspiration for new ideas. Now, in other food and beverage clients, we've had nutritionists come in, chefs come in, talk about the latest trends. Another project with Craft, we're doing future vending. So, you have the futurists and the technologists, and all to give you that fresh inspiration. And then the third one I said I'll get onto is the creative exercises. So look, there are thousands out there. There's some great books out there on different sort of brainstorming techniques. I think they pretty boil down into about 3 or so. So there's random connections. You all know the story about Velcro? Some of you do. So the guy was trying to find a new way to fasten shirts or jackets other than buttons, and went out. Swiss engineer went out walking in the bush or in the fields one day, came back and noticed all the hookweed or burrs stuck to his dog and to his socks. And if you look at Velcro, it's a loop and a hook. And so, that's quite serendipitous or quite random. But he still primed his brain with a problem. There's always a few Kiwi examples in here. Anyway, so back to the last America's Cup. The New Zealand team said, well, they had this analogy, throw the tennis balls far away from the boat as we can, then bring it back in. And what they meant by is their ideas, let's just really go out there and then work out how we can make them happen. And they worked out that you've got the grinders, you've got the sails go up and down. And they're like, well, your leg muscles are bigger than your arms and your shoulders and that. So what if we actually put bikes on the boat? So, literally spin bikes, and they're called the cycles. And the rest is history. They won the America's Cup back. Apparently the captain was an Aussie, but skip over that. And the third one, which is a great one, is breaking the rules. We all love breaking the rules, and there's so many industries out there that are ripe for disruption, or just so many organisations who have been doing things the same old way and needs to be disrupted. So, what Airbnb and many others has done is a classic example of that. So anyway, it's time for another exercise. So if you can do this in 3s or 4s, it'll work better, but you can try it in pairs. It just got less brain power. Yeah? So you're in the innovation team for Nike, and you have to come up with a new sports shoe. And guess what your bit of inspiration is? It's a banana, okay? Now someone's already brainstormed the yellow one, so I want you pushing a bit hard on that. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Go for it, see what you can come up with. There's a prize for the most funkiest, new, innovative sports shoe. We're gonna stop there. This team here thinks they've got a really good cracker. So you got a big voice, Mike.
So it's the shoe peels on and off your foot like the banana.
Yeah, we've got it over here, mate.
And
we've registered it as well.
I've
already taken a photo and registered it.
And then you store the shoe, instead of taking up valuable floor space, you have all the shoes hanging as a bunch and you pluck them off the bunch and you back them up.
Very good, very good. Okay, yeah.
We've also registered ours as well. It's called Slippers.
Okay, who else we got? He's already got a box though. Yep.
Okay, so we saw banana biodegrades and it's slippery, so we decided to invent a biodegradable snowshoe.
Fantastic.
Then you didn't have to bring it back on your trip.
And does it go brown when you know it's time to replace it? Thought so. Excellent. I think that deserves it. Or do we need to hear them all. We need more?
So we're thinking like bananas that grow on trees, so why not have growable shoes?
Use of banana byproduct, the leaves and so on for packaging and also insoles and things like that. And that's technologies.
Excellent.
But also banana skins and other byproduct for plastics. From the technologies.
Non-slip shoes.
Excellent.
Shoes and biodegradable shoes and
Fantastic.
eco-friendly shoes.
You're judging by the way they see. Down the back somewhere?
Yeah, shoes with banana slide technology,
Excellent. Okay, over here.
Also, harnessing the power of the banana slide, because it is a sports shoe after all. So that's the feeling of slipping on banana peel, but you're actually pulling yourself forward. And then using the shape of the peel, you know, when you unpeel a banana. So if you imagine your shoes looking like that, and then you can directionally move yourself. The banana peel's working as blades.
Nice one. You got a winner?
I think that just sounds like fun.
There you go. So you have got fun with your team. And remember, that's how they came up with Velcro. So don't diss it. Rightio. This is one I love, and at least there's not too many of you here that I've worked with before. It's called Best in World or Parallel Worlds. It's a really good lateral thinking technique. So you take your challenge and go, well, who else in the world does this really well? So like we said, okay, who else does cold really well? And the lovely Irish guy out of in Bruges said, what'd you say?
Beer cooler.
Beer cooler. But then the next important bit is go, well, how do you, it's all in the book, you just got to buy one of them. How does it do that? Like how does a beer cooler keep the beer cool? Because then we're going to leverage that to come up with our new ideas. Okay? So we're going to do one together. So, let's go back a few years in time. And we want to reinvent stick deodorant. That's what they call it. Yeah? So we're working for Unilever now. Not Nike, not quite as cool. And the customer experience of using the stick deodorant, it's not that great, it's a bit messy, it's a bit hit and miss. So we go, who else in the world is really good at applying a substance? Or what else?
Glue stick.
Glue stick. Yep.
Dulux.
Dulux. Yeah, with a paintbrush. Yep.
Makeup. Max Factor.
Yeah, Max Factor. Or a roller with a paintbrush. What else?
Double-sided tape.
Double-sided tape. Get a wax as well.
Toddlers.
Toddlers, they apply stuff there. Yeah. What else?
Airguard.
Airguard. Okay, we might need the Irish plant soon.
Paintball gun.
Oh yeah. Oh cool. Yep.
Lipstick.
Lipstick.
Showers. A washing powder to deodorant.
Ah, very good. Yep. What do you write with every day? Yes. Thank you. And how does it do it? The ball applies a liquid and roll-on deodorant. The Mum brand was invented by you. Yeah. So once again, you can get inspiration from anywhere to come up with a new innovation for your category, your problem, or whatever. Okay. So we could reinvent New South Wales trains, for example. You do some research on trains, commuting. It's actually not, hey, make my trip shorter. It's how could I utilise my time better? So we go, okay, who utilises time better? And you might come up with libraries or gyms or whatever. And we could have a bit of train experience. Anyway, we'll skip that on. Okay, so the next one, break the rules. So very similar setup to the best in the world. So this time you take your challenge, you go, what are all the rules? And the rules can be the status quo, the sacred cows that are around this challenge. And then what if we create some revolutions? What if we reverse O's or exaggerate in England? And then once again borrow from those to come up with something new. So let's disrupt the taxi experience, eh? Who's ever been in a taxi? Yeah? Who got a taxi tonight? No one. Wonder why. So, what are the rules, the norms, doesn't have to be the regulations, of the taxi industry?
Talking at you.
Talking at you, yep.
Bad drivers.
Bad drivers,
Pay for it.
pay for it.
A light that says it's available.
Yeah, light that says it's available. Hailing.
Yellow.
And not, yep, yelling.
Yellow.
Oh, yellow, sorry.
Or yellow.
You can somebody.
No cab charge.
Yeah.
License.
And how's it working in New South Wales?
You pay at the end of the ride.
Yeah, pay at the end of the ride. And what if you want to book one? What do you do?
Send the wall a number.
What if you want to book one for tomorrow?
You phone a number or you go through a website.
And then you book them 15 minutes in advance.
No, you can.
Yeah,
Right.
now.
License.
Yeah, so you book 15 minutes in advance for most of them. Wait outside for the pickup, even if it's raining. Pay by card or cash. Well, I love this one when I'm going to a client meeting. Oh, my FPOS machine's not working. And then they're like waving around trying to find something, you know? Some satellite's going to give them connection.
And then no one's got cash on them anymore.
Yeah.
So then they start, right, you and me outside.
And then you're late. You're late for your meeting.
And you get threatened.
So if we did some revolutions, we could book at any time, notified of arrival, pay seamlessly or digitally, hassle-free, and shit, we've just invented Uber. Yeah. And look, I don't know if they went through that process, but you can see. So look, if I was you after tonight, I'd go out there and I'd pick an industry that needs disrupting and get to it. There you go. Okay. So look, that's the first two, and the brain and how we overcome that obviously is almost to the bonus point. It's coming up with all these new skills, these new techniques. So we fill our brains with stimulus, and we can bring new stimulus in or go out and get it, or we can use creative exercises. Now, no matter how good your creative exercises are, if you don't have the next three barriers overcome or whatever, you haven't tackled them, then you're going to come up with crap ideas. Yeah, and the next one's behaviours. So if we think of the business world, and the typical behaviours of the business world is about swift analysis, judgment, critical reasoning skills, elements of argument, yeah? And it all serves a purpose, but it's not very good for creativity. So what I'd love to do quickly in pairs, you're going to brainstorm a weekend away together. It is Valentine's Eve, so it's quite appropriate. But person A, which will be the tallest person out of the pair, is to come up with the ideas. So you may have to stand up to do this. Person B, so you're the slightly less tall person, yeah, like me. You are to judge, shoot down, laugh, yawn, snigger at every idea they come up with. Okay? Please, no punching. Okay, let's go. Okay, I need to stop there. Some of you want to keep going. Okay. Who was Can we quickly hear from a couple of person A's to the tall people? How did that? I know it's a bit of a laugh, but honestly, how did it feel? Normal. Very honest. What else? Felt normal, what else?
I feel like me and Sam have been married for years.
Feels like marriage. Very normal. Anything else? Annoying. Bit deflating, yeah, bit deflating. Yeah? So look, and this is what happens, and it's not that our business world behaviours are wrong, they're just wrong for creativity. But we're so used to them, this happens without you even knowing, you know? Someone gives you an idea, it is ingrained in us to judge it. That's how we work. At least most cultures do. Short term impact is that person's not going to contribute any more ideas to that session. Long term, they may withdraw, you know, and ripple effect, that organisation becomes Kodak. I'm not saying they were like this, but yeah. So why? So it goes all the way back, there's a bit of a Greek theme tonight too, to the Greek philosophers. So, you know, they didn't have boats to sail around the world to prove it was flat or round. So they had to prove their theories through argument. And the person with the best argument won. And so then that's become the way of doing things in Western culture. Yeah? And then you go through school, go through society, you go through business, career or whatever, and it gets drummed into us. Has anyone seen this TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson? It's fantastic. I'm just going to steal one of his stories. He's got so many. There's some kids sitting in class, fairly young, can do year 1, 2, whatever. And it's sort of free art time. So they can do whatever they want. Teacher comes round, says to Mary, "Mary, what are you drawing?" And Mary goes, "God." And the teacher goes, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And Mary goes, "Well, they will in a minute." So something happens between that moment and then today. But yeah, I don't know if it's the best ever TED Talk or whatever, it's got a lot of hits. So the thing we want to think about is, so when I was growing up, we had a veggie garden, and you'd get to plant stuff, and there's normally the radishes because they'd grow easily. I think they're radishes. You know, when you buy those, you get the free seeds at Woolworths. They give you the radishes because anyone can grow radishes. And they'd be growing, and you'd be going, "Okay, I want to weed them now." You know, you're going to thin them, but you're also going to weed them out. But you're like, "Well, is that a weed or is that a radish?" And they sort of at that stage, they all look the same. You know. I was like, "Well, Dad, I don't know what to do." And he's like, "Well, just we'll keep fertilising them. Lived on a farm, so lots of poop. Get the watering can out, water them, and they grow a bit more, and they get to be big enough. Oh, that's the weed, and that's the radish, and I can pull the weeds out." Yeah, so it's the same with ideas. When they're early on, when they're those fledgling ideas, you can't judge them because you don't know if it's a good idea or not. You don't know if it's going to be the Uber or the Airbnb, the SiteMinder. Yeah, you just don't know. So what you need to do, first of all, you need to, because remember everyone's in business world. Come on, I've got an idea. Judge. Actually going into a creative session, whatever, start how you want. Why don't you have a look at this idea? I don't want you to judge it. Can you just suspend your judgment? Yeah, so we all know the no judging rule. That's why we do it. So you can then understand that idea, you can nurture it like you did with those seedlings. So you can then build on the idea. Because the really good ideas are the ones you build on. I remember running my first brainstorm at Unilever, you got an idea, Fred, Mary, we just came up with all these ideas, hundreds of ideas, but didn't build on any of them. None of them were really any good. So the other behaviours, and you've got to do that signalling. Yeah? Otherwise they're just going to judge them. So without those behaviours, the skills and that you learned before won't work very well. So should we do a role reversal? Yeah? So short-term person, you're now going to signal, come up with an idea for a Valentine's weekend away together. And person A, the taller person, is going to suspend their judgment and try and build on that idea, and then you're going to keep riffing off each other's ideas. Okay? Yeah? And then we'll have the prize of a book signed by the author for the best weekend away idea. Okay? Go. Okay, step again. Okay. You are really long. We throw in Valentine's weekend and you're all excited. You keep going. Who's got a really exciting weekend away? Yeah?
We started by going to Tokyo and drink lots of sake, and then we thought we'd rescue the people on the boat with coronavirus, and then we're going to make up a cure and roam it all around the world in champagne bottles.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Okay. It was a bit more fun than the first time though, wasn't it? Yeah? Right now, let's jump into state, and then we've just got one more, and the next one's really quick, because I was getting tired by then. So, I mean, geez, I actually tried to do this at home in the studio. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it. But I couldn't even work out, trying to get your hands, actually, you've got to be like that. And then, he must put his head on the floor or something first, because to go straight into that position. So to be able to do that, what sort of state's he in? Physically? Awesome. Yeah, awesome. He is available tomorrow for Valentine's Day, by the way, so you've just got to ask form on Unsplash for his name. Okay, physically. Mentally, how is he mentally? Sober? Yes. I used to do the bridge after a few drinks, but that was a bit easier. Any other thoughts on mentally? Focus, yep. In flow, there you go. Okay, what about emotionally? Balanced, present, and spiritually? You're hungry? Oh, angry. Yeah, he does look a bit angry. And spiritually? Well, spiritually can be whatever it means for you. But yeah.
Focus?
It's zone, it's connected, isn't it?
Focus?
Yeah. So right now you're all in a certain state, yeah? And obviously it's alert, interested, engaged, excited. Some are slightly inebriated. Yeah? But when you're trying to come up with ideas, if you're not in the right state, you won't come up with ideas. Yeah? The magic comes from the people, not the process. So once again, those skills and tools and all that, they won't work. And if they're not working, your team's not in the right state. And if you don't choose your state, it'll choose itself. Okay? So this is when your ideas are stuck. And this is from a guy called Chris Brown, who's written lots of great books. British guy. And then, what would a state be? I guess it's like the guy before, but what would a state be for ideas? What sort of state would you want your teams in? If you're running a brainstorm, what state would you want to create? Energized. Relaxed. Safe. Valued. In the moment. Yeah. Has anyone ever tried to have an idea when they're serious? Yeah? Try to think hard for an idea. Two things will happen. Yeah? You either had a stroke, or or you'll backfire. So these are, the things we count on with. So how do we get into that sort of state? Well, one way is to think about our brainwaves, and this is the piece that my friend Simon Sinek got onto. So we can think about brainwaves as beta. This is what you're like now when you go to work, yeah? Alpha, when you're in deep relaxation, relax, you're alert, maybe, start of yoga. Theta is when you're dreaming, deep meditation. So, it's a bit of the yoga at the end. Why is it when they do the meditation at the end, everyone starts fasting? And then obviously delta's deep sleep. So who's the light bulb guy? Edison. So what Edison used to do is he would sit in a metal dish on a chair and hold a heavy object like a rock or whatever to get into theta, to tap into a subconscious. Now why he held the rock is because he didn't want to drift off into delta. Yeah? So what would happen if you go into delta? Bang! Yeah, you wake them up. So then you can go through it again and get into theta again. Yeah? So you might want to try that one on your next brainstorm. So how do we get into these alpha and theta states? So look, there's a number of things we can do. Having time and space. We can't have ideas when we've been busy. We have ideas when we go on holidays. It's not because we're on holiday, but because we're in that non-firefighting mode. Yeah? So our brain's able to slow down. Because what do we do now if we're bored? Yeah, you get on your devices. So devices are in some ways killing our creativity. Be your true self. Everyone knows who he really is. Spoiler alert. So look, there's a lot at the moment talking about coming to work and being your true self or your best self, or I think if you're your true self, you are your best self. I think there's even a post about not coming to work and being your best self, which is interesting. But you can't be creative if you're not being your true self. Semi-automatic activities. So there's a great one. So if you're doing an activity like peeling carrots, going for a walk, going for a run, having a shower, driving unfortunately, you don't need to use your whole brain, your full conscious brain. So half of it turns off and it allows the subconscious to kick in. So that's why you have those ideas a week later, or someone says something and then 2 hours later you go, oh, I wish I'd said that. It's because when you're in that firefighting mode, you can't think of new ideas. Inspiring environments. So they, once again, jolt our attention out of its usual groove, but also give us inspiration. And look, that could be Bradley's head, or it could be going to the zoo, or it could be, walking through the markets. It could be anything. We had some of those ideas before. And then Morning Glories, there's a lady called Julia Cameron who wrote The Artist's Way. And I think she was a writer. But she had a few drinks to get her writing going. Which is good. She's a good writer. But then the creativity would decline as she had more drinks. And she became an alcoholic. Which wasn't so good. So she stopped drinking. And she lost her curative muse. She couldn't write anymore. So she went through all these different exercises without drinking to try and be creative again. And one of them is every morning she'd just write, I think, 3 or 4 pages of just whatever was in her head, just to clear all the dead wood out. So if there's no space in there, you can't have new ideas. The other one she'd do is take her muse, so herself, on an artist date. So like some of the things we were talking about before. So going to inspiring environments and things like that. So she's got a whole book on things she's done. And now she's creative again. So often what we'll do in workshops, when we've done the customer insights or whatever, what the problem is, we'll then get the team to go away and incubate before they come back and ideate. Yeah? So you want to build a bit of incubation in all the time. Rightio, last one. So space. Who works here? Does anyone's office looks like this? Desk upon desk upon desk. You're sitting there, hatching eggs, typing. Yeah? So a lot like behaviours and some of the other barriers, you know, our business environment, not just the modern day business environment, even years ago, it's all about productivity. Get stuff done. It's not conducive to creativity. So we need two environments. An environment for ideas and an environment for making them happen. So just quickly, you know, we need to think about, well, what's the purpose of the space? And then design it for that purpose. So some things you can do. Signal failure is okay. So I was lucky enough, I went up to D school a few years ago. And a couple of guys there, Jeremy and Perry, and they talk about you could knock out of a pile of paint, it wouldn't matter. Yeah? Because that's the environment they wanted to create. And if you've ever been on a D school course, you know, their slides aren't that slick. Actually very average. And that's the whole point. You know? Is that just that whole prototype and test approach? Designated prototyping space. If you go up to Silicon Valley, for example, every single organisation has a designated prototyping space. And we'll talk about, you know, low fidelity prototyping. And also, we're actually more creative when we've got a bit of quiet space. And so Stanford did this research, and what they found is people want acoustic, not visual separation. Yeah. So they want to be able to see everybody, but you don't want to hear everybody. So that's why this, you know, this whole hot desking, that's another reason why it doesn't really work. And then an environment where you can show up and be yourself. And if you're having to find a new desk every day, you can't be yourself. Yeah? Can't put your favourite photo there or your pot plant or things like that. But I guess we all know a lot of that agile way of working, not agile development. It's really about saving money. So there you have it. So the other 5 killers of creativity, but there's ways of overcoming them all. Yeah. Just get your people to have a go, start believing, but then give them confidence by overcoming the other barriers and teaching them new skills and having successes. So we overcome our brain by thinking laterally. We adopt more creative behaviours by suspending judgment, understanding, building on ideas. We need to be conscious of what state we're in. You know, you all probably know where you have your best ideas. If it's in the cafe, then go to the cafe. And I guess that's the other point, is space is probably one of the biggest levers on state and also behaviours. Any questions?
First of all, thank you very much, Nathan. It was, as I said before, brings back a lot of memories. I can see some of the similar stories that moved me a lot, intertwined into that experience there, so that was really, really nice. Probably start with the question that I've heard probably 3 people ask you whilst standing next to you about the experience of writing a book, and maybe start with what you were trying to achieve, what was the space you were trying to target, what's the problem that you're solving, and then talk us about the writing experience itself and how you got to actually write a book. Because to be honest, I'd love to write a book at some point in time. I've got the content. I love the insights.
That was about 4 questions, wasn't it?
Yeah. You tell us the story.
Yeah. So why I wrote a book was, it's because we're still getting innovation wrong. Yeah. So when I started my career, I was worked at Unilever as a brand manager. We had a stage gate process, if you know what that is. There's a guy called Dr. Cooper, and he came up with the stage gate process. And he researched 2,000 innovation projects and found out what was killing innovation, why everyone was doing so badly. And it's because they're getting the front end of the innovation process wrong. It's not the front end of the design, the front end of the process. It was like, I don't know when he wrote his book, but this is going back to 2000 when I was a little young brand manager and looked like Michael McPhail, but a bit shorter. And now we've got design thinking, human-centered design, same thing. We've got business model canvas, business model thinking, we've got lean startup, and then we've got the other stuff that comes after agile development and that. And yet our success rates haven't improved. And why is that? Because we keep jumping to solution. Let's build. Yeah? And a lot of it's driven by our managers and driven by short-term pressures. And I guess it's about spending a bit of time to save your time later. So that's why I wrote the book. It's like, we've got to get this front end right. It's what I've spent my 20 years working doing. It's definitely, the saying, standing on shoulders of giants. I've borrowed from a lot of other people, hopefully referenced them all. Wiley did the legals to make sure I had. Yeah, but it's borrowed from all those. And then, so what's in it is my view, and working with others, working with Rob. He's normally up the front with me, and it's normally a lot funnier because he's an Irish guy. I think all Irish people are funny. And so it takes design thinking, business model canvas, and lean startup. When to use them, how to use them together, and in the right order. Yeah, because I see people using those tools in the wrong way. And sometimes it's just because we don't know any better. Or because they've been taught the wrong way, or even, unfortunately, written about the wrong way. But it's still just my view. How long did it take? It's a multi-answer question. So obviously I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't look that old. You need to laugh. Jokes on being better. So I've been working in this field for 20 years, apart from a few times client side, but even then I was in similar sort of roles. I've been training, consulting, all that sort of stuff, so I had lots of material. So I was working at KPMG, didn't want them to get hold of it, so I had to do it on my own laptop, outside of work hours, all that. But I literally took 4 weeks of leave over 12 months. So July 2018, took a week off, smashed out heaps of it. I say smashed it out, it wasn't really about smashing it out, but Then took 2 weeks off at Christmas, and then another week off for last July. And that gave me a manuscript, which I sent to Wiley. And then it was 6 months of editing, so getting up early in the morning, going to sleep late at night, and working weekends, and editing it. And look, it was, a lot of the time it was fun, It was sort of a labour of love order. But there were some hard moments. You think, oh, this is very cool, and then you go to bed. I don't know if anyone else has seen to one of the guys before. At night, sometimes you get a bit down, and you go, oh no, this is shit, no one's going to read it. Then you wake up in the morning all excited again.
Does anyone else in the audience have any questions for Nathan?
I was just going to ask Nathan, because I haven't read the book, but obviously from the presentation tonight, it feels like you've got a really good guidance. It sort of feels like you've done the talk to try and get us to sort of understand the process. Is the book more like something you can dip into and use certain parts of it, or should you sort of read it methodically?
So I think you can definitely dip into it. It's I should have it up there. I'll share with you what the chapters are. Maybe that helps with it. I'll probably know them off by heart. So the first one, there's a couple of intro chapters. It's like my journey of discovery to innovation flow. So it's just my little story about how I got to where I got to. And look, we cut heaps of that out. It became a bit too self-help. The one I really loved writing but found hardest was what's all this noise about design. And I try and demystify my own words in that. And it's my view, it's not others. But I think you've got to put that view out there and you've got to challenge people. Because I want people to get better at this. And then it's get started, discover, empathy, all that sort of stuff, distill insights, hardest part of design thinking on innovation. And then ideate, incubate, and create, which we touched on a bit tonight. Then ideate, chapter on idea generation workshops. And then 2 chapters on experimentation. So first for desirability, and then a second one for feasibility and viability. And that's where the business model canvas and lean startup, and that comes in as well. It's 200 pages, but it's a bit hard to talk about your own book, but I think it's a fairly easy read, because there's no accent. But you could dip in as well. Yeah. as long as you're using it properly and not jumping the solution.
Have you ever come across that book called Userpalooza?
Yeah, my mate wrote it.
Yeah, there you
Nick
go.
Bowmanis.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have it. Yeah, Userpalooza is a fantastic book, and it's all on the whole setting up your field research and then how to do it and then how to synthesize it.
Interestingly, you mentioned your perspective on design, and you wanted to share that with obviously the world through the book. In your 20 years, where have you seen design progress, and where can we still grow and improve, and what is your current view on the state of design in Sydney, Australia, compared to the rest of the world?
I think Brandon should answer that. I think design-led innovation, so using this customer-centric or design-led approach to innovation, which is more what I'm about, and obviously I work with designers. I think in Australia, in terms of the bell curve, at a guess, and I could be miles off, we're probably in the late majority, so you got innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, laggards. So I think in terms of adoption, we're over the hump. But I think in terms of mastery, I think we're early days. And that's natural. And that's why we still see a lot of jumping to solution, because we're still early in that mastery journey. Yeah.
You might have just made a hint at it then, but you mentioned, should I do that? Sorry.
Yes.
You might have just made a hint at it then, but you made a mention earlier before around doing it wrong, like you're just doing it wrong. What would be some indicators or things that you see happening where you go, you need to be trying something else?
And look, I used to do this too. As soon as a brand manager at Innovator, we'd get in a room and we'd brainstorm the customer, or in that case, consumer insights. Yeah? So you're making up customer needs and insights. And sometimes you can, because you know them well enough. But your insights are only as good as your understanding of the customer. And what does Steve Blank say? Customers don't live in the building, get out of the building. And in the book we talk about interviewing them and doing all those sorts of techniques, but also observing them. You get so much from that. And there's a great little case study in there about when we were creating new food products for primary school age children. And the insight for that new product we came up with came through observing them. Yeah. Brandon, did you want to add anything to that previous question?
No, I kind of died to ask you a question. What business, what brand, what company out there, anywhere in the world is the most design-led, in your opinion? Who's doing it? Who's doing all of this stuff better than anyone in the world?
Apple?
Yeah. Well, that's a tough question too.
Tesla?
Yeah, there's a lot out there. I look at what like Gore do, in terms of Gore-Tex, and how they set up their teams and everything like that as well. A lot of it seems like a lot of the new ones, the Ubers and the Airbnbs and things like that. But it's actually amazing how many startups. The founders or entrepreneurs, they sort of have this in their genes, and so they naturally do it. But the rest of the organisation sort of doesn't, and so they do end up falling into that jump into solution and things like that. Yeah. But all the Kiwi companies, Xero, Spring Free Trampoline, Icebreaker, Macpacted, a few Aussie ones.
Second question is, when do you think our government's going to actually start?
I think that's a good design question.
I'm pushing more. So, book 2.
How would you redesign government?
Hey. So I work in the not-for-profit space, and so we're run by a board. And one of the things that I've noticed happens a lot is you have a lot of innovation from the people that are on the ground doing the work, and it all gets quashed because board members are of a certain type usually. They're not immersed in the act or the product. They're sometimes just donors or people from the outside. So if I wanted to try and change the way the members of the board looked at innovation, what are some of the opportunities there, or how could I go about it?
I think that's a great question, and look, we'd all love to work with the execs and the boards more, and it's really hard to get that audience. The best ways I've seen of changing people's behaviours is to give them an experience. So if you can give them an experience, and it's so hard to get their time, you've really got to hook them with the why first. And if you can give them an experience of it, get them out there and doing some customer, or what do you call your customers? Citizen? No.
We call them clients.
Clients. Yeah. Get them out there and experience what it is like for their customers, and get them to generate some insights and ideas off that. You don't have to go as far as prototyping and give them an experience. When some of the great wow things are going on study tours, but that's expensive, that's time consuming. But it's seeing to believe it.
How does the conversation go down between you and a client when you're convincing them to slow down, take their time, to step into the void, the emergence, when there's no guarantee of a solution? When the whole paradigm of our thinking is still stuck in, we need to get a solution, we need to get it fast.
You get it fast, man.
Find a new client? I've got one at the moment who trying to get across the line. It's an old client, and she's great, she gets it, but it's her boss. So they're an FMCG company. The ancient hold, it's the first year ever their sales have gone backwards. So they now want to do Horizon 3, disruptive innovation or whatever. They want to do a design sprint. Want to do it in a week, I don't know if you heard me before saying how the front end of the innovation process is the most important. So Cooper identified 8 success factors, 5 of them are to do with the front end. So why would you sprint the most important bit? I think that's where Jake Knapp's been misunderstood. I think design sprints are great for user experience, incremental innovation, things like that, but you wouldn't want to do it phase 3. So yeah, we're going through that journey. I've sent them a copy of the book. Hope they read it. What I'd love to do is an experiment or a A/B test. Yeah, we'll do a 5-week one. I'll do that one at no cost, and we'll do a 12-week or whatever one. Yeah, let's see what we come up with. But there's not many clients who are going to do that. But that would be pretty cool. Maybe we could organise that somehow. All the different people in the room. Yeah. Do some myth busting. Any more questions? All good? Everyone wants a drink? We'll get home. I brought some signed copies along. They're normally $35 or $34.95. I figured you already all paid $10 to get here. It's probably not generous enough. So if you want a copy, you can grab them tonight for $20. Apologise to a couple of people here who've already paid $29.99. Through our website, happy to give you a discount. So yeah, look, happy to chat further. If you want to grab a book for $20, you can. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you again, Nathan, for being so insightful and sharing your time and your stories with us. I also want to take the opportunity, or maybe one last round of applause for Nathan. It's really, really precious. The meetup wouldn't work without people like you giving your time, so thank you. Also need to thank Ben, Zoe, James, Kate. I gave reference to the start of the meetup. I need to have a special call out for Kate. She's our ThoughtWorks co-organiser. Yes, and the volunteers, thank you for manning the doors and letting people in. Nathan, obviously, for streaming live. We've got a number of people trying to help us out and provide this experience to not just people in the room, but also more broadly. So hopefully we see a lot of you guys back again next month and the month after that. So it's always good to see new faces, maybe bring other people along, and we'll try and make this more interactive. We're also thinking about running some think tanks out there and running some more bigger events where we can sort of start thinking about making improvements in the way we do things socially, or even focus on design, or there'll be various aspects we'll try and explore. So keep posted on what we're thinking about doing in the future, and thank you very much for a brilliant evening. If you want to keep the conversation going, we're going to duck over to the Occidental. Typical old man's pub, probably could do with a bit of design inspiration, but they still serve cold beer and wine, etc. So feel free to join us there.
On 12th of March for the next SydDT, and it'll be part of the International Women's Day week, so it'll be appropriately themed. See you then.